Hello, nonprofit leaders. This week, we're going to be talking about your other volunteers. There's going to be 3 videos this week on your other volunteers, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday of this week. And when I say other volunteers, I mean other than your board members. Your other volunteers are leg 2 of your team. Let's talk about why you need a volunteer program. The importance of volunteers to your nonprofit really cannot be overstated. Volunteers will build your capacity, they provide support to your paid staff, and increase the effectiveness of mission delivery. Volunteers add significant value to every area of your nonprofit. This topic does contain 3 lessons. That's why you're going to be hearing about each one of them over a period of 1 week. So today will be your volunteer policy, Wednesday, your volunteer program manual, and Friday, your volunteer handbook. Now, your second lesson on your volunteer program manual will go through the development of your volunteer program, and your volunteer handbook is what you're going to give to your volunteers during your orientation process. Let's start with your volunteer policy, which will be available for download on my website under, it's called the free stuff link, and that link will be on the last slide of this lesson. So why do you even need a volunteer policy? Well, all policies have the purpose of protecting your nonprofit from liability and providing direction when certain similar situations arise again, like conflicts of interest or sexual harassment. Let me tell you what they're not. I one time was involved with a nonprofit that a couple of the board members became angry at some of the staff because the board members thought the staff wasn't complying with a certain policy. Well, it turned out that actually it wasn't a policy. It was just something they had done years ago for many years. That was a tradition, not a policy. Your policies, if you're expecting your employees, your staff to follow them, have to be written and part of your training of your staff. Now, it's really important to know that having policies in place does provide that legal protection for a nonprofit, and volunteers are simply no exception. The purpose of your volunteer policy is for your board to set the tone by establishing the policy. The policy says we take our obligations seriously and we fully understand the importance and value of volunteers to mission delivery. The policy I'm providing your nonprofit that you're going to download from my website, you're free to use in your own nonprofit. You'll want to tweak it, and you'll see some red font that tells you where to think about tweaking. It has some key features that we should discuss. Legally, your board needs to understand that pursuant to the Federal Volunteer Protection Act, your volunteers cannot be sued if they cause personal or property damage to someone your nonprofit serves. So for instance, if your volunteer mishandles a piece of equipment or food, something like that, and the client becomes ill or injured, the volunteer cannot be sued, but your nonprofit can be sued. Therefore, you need to make sure the volunteers are covered in your general liability insurance policy. Check with your agent and get it in writing if your agent confirms that volunteers are covered. I say that because finding it in your policy can be difficult. Have your agent cite you to the provision in your policy that covers volunteers. If you look at that provision and it's as clear as mud, that's another reason to get an email from the agent saying clearly that volunteers are covered. If they're not covered, get them covered. If the volunteer is injured while performing work for your organization, are they covered on your workers' compensation policy? If not, how else are you prepared to pay for their injuries? Does the general liability policy cover that situation? Here's another situation. Does your insurance include hired and non-owned vehicles driven while in the service of your organization? You might have that coverage just for your staff, but do you have it for volunteers? Those are just a few of those key issues. Download the policy from my website. Again, the link to receive it is on I believe it's the next screen. And if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to email me. Next up on Wednesday, a continuation of your other volunteers, like 2 of your team. We will be going over your volunteer program, how to develop it, and that's what your manual will contain. And I'll explain to you how you get that. There's the link to download your volunteer policy. You can download it directly from my website at that link. And as usual, if you have questions or comments, post them here on my Facebook page, or feel free to email me at nancy@poweryourmission.com. See you Wednesday.